Hello everyone and welcome back to another high-level match of StarCraft 2. What I've got for you today is the grand finals of the ESL Open Cup number 151 for the European region. Game number 1 in this best-of-5 series. It takes place on the map Cosmic Sapphire. You probably won't be surprised to learn that spawning right here in the top left-hand corner, playing with the blue Protoss probes from Denmark, we have MaxPax. MaxPax has been playing in pretty much every single one of these for, well, quite some time right now. He's been doing very well, winning many of them too, and I've covered him quite a bit actually in the ESL Open Cups over the last couple of months. Always looking very strong, and recently actually he's been changing up his playstyle in Protoss versus Zerg quite a bit. We'll talk about that a little bit more in just a second. Let's introduce his opponent here first and foremost, playing with the purple Zerg drones. Not a color we see all too often, but I gotta say, I kinda like it. He's from Germany, and he goes by the name of Lambo. Lambo definitely has the skills and the capabilities to make it to the grand finals of this weekly tournament all of the time, but he simply doesn't play in as many as MaxPax does. So we've seen him win a couple in the past, but not quite as many as MaxPax. Anyways, Lambo in general, a very stock standard macro-focused Zerg. I mean, obviously he's more than capable of mixing it up, but in the vast majority of the games that I see him play, he goes for that much more straightforward European macro Zerg style that you'll probably be very familiar with. MaxPax on the other hand, I mean, he's very much so also a macro toss these days. I mean, when he first came up years ago, he played very cheesily, and obviously he was well known for the MaxPax build in Protoss versus Terran, where you quite literally go for a pylon into another pylon, which, if you've not seen it, it doesn't really make a lot of sense, but in the current meta of Terran versus Protoss, it actually still works really well. Anyways, he's really transitioned over the years towards becoming a macro Protoss, which is, in a way, a little bit sad, right? Because I'm personally a big fan of the cheesy playstyles, but when you want to win at the highest level, which is what MaxPax does, you kind of have to, play that more macro-focused style. So he mixes it in from time to time, but more often than not, these days, he does go for that more macro-focused approach. That being said, MaxPax was a big fan of making Void Rays in the Void Ray era. He's been a big fan of making Oracles as well now in the Oracle era. But over the last couple of weeks, I've seen him mixing it up a lot. I think I casted maybe a best of 3, a best of 5, I'm not entirely sure anymore, but I've casted a bunch of games of him where he just never went for a Stargate at all, which is kind of an interesting shift. A lot of the Korean Protoss, at the very least at DreamHack Atlanta, they have been going for a lot of Stargate openers, so I'm not entirely sure what's changed, and once again in this game as well, he starts off with a Twilight Council. So, yeah, I'm curious to see if he decides to go for any Stargate play in this series, because I haven't seen him go for that a whole lot recently. Okay, getting one nice kill over there. Adept now wanders into the main base after he went for a very quick probe scout and blocked the third base, right? Or the natural rather first, so... Okay, Lambo was forced to take the third base. Very, close shade there, but just a couple HP remaining is all you really need. Zergling speed is not done just yet, so... I think he can kill those Zerglings. Yeah, no, he can. Alright, nice catch right there by Lambo, but not quite enough to actually finish off that Adept. It's a Dark Templar rush. Okay. I'm actually a fan of the Dark Templar opener, primarily because, so most of the time when we see DTs, it's either 3 gateways or 4 gateways, and I think this is the triple gateway variant. So what you do is you warp in a bunch of Dark Templar, you try to deal damage on the other side of the map, of course you warp them in using that prism, and then you morph them into Archons as a follow-up. This is one of my personal favorite openers. I'm not very good at it, but I think it's a lot of fun to see, because you have like a very quick 2-wave attack, right? So the Dark Templar, they usually force out Zerglings and stuff, and well, then you pick up the Dark Templar, you morph them into Archons, and then suddenly you have something that's amazing against those Zerglings. That being said, though, we already have a Roach Warren about halfway done right here for our German Zerg, so I don't think that the Dark Templar are going to be able to achieve all too much, but I wouldn't be surprised if the Archon are still annoying. Actually, he's been making quite a few Adepts. 4 Adepts, I mean, that's one of the Adepts from the early game still left over. Okay. So he's probably going to try and get the Dark Templar. I mean, he needs to warp them in, though. Oh, he needs to wait, actually. I think he's probably going to try and deal some damage with the Dark Templar in the main base, and then maybe try and hit with the Adepts at the third base at the same time, so the Zerg is going to be forced to split. No, he actually decides to commit them all in one big ball. Interesting little unit composition over here. So 4 Adepts together with 3 Dark Templar. That prism is being zoned away really nicely right here by the queens. I actually kind of like it. There's no lair done just yet. There's not even one started, meaning that there's no form of mobile detection. And even though this is not usually a combination of units that we see at this point in the game, it's actually working kind of well. Because if you can get the queens away from their detection, yeah, maybe you can get a shade into the main base. That would be excellent. Okay, good amount of drones are starting to fall right now. Adepts eventually are going to get cleaned up, but now the Dark Templar are working on the Spore Crawler in the natural. Queen's finally brave enough to move on over now that the one Spore Crawler over there, okay, even decides to morph them into an Archon and recoil. He's out of there. Beautiful. Okay, the Queen's finally brave enough to move on over in that direction. That was almost a disaster, but honestly, that was still awful right here for Lambo. At the cost of only one Dark Templar and a couple Adepts. Yeah, 13 drones ended up going down right there to that harassment. Interesting. Okay. So that's a build we've seen many times before, but apparently he decided to, add on some additional adepts. And the combination of units there, even though it's not particularly common, it worked out pretty well. 2 more Dark Templar coming up. And apparently morph those into Archons here as well, so the harassment here is not quite done. Now, by the way, for those of you unfamiliar, I found out recently that apparently a lot of people that watch the main channel videos have absolutely no idea that I've got a second YouTube channel as well. If you go to youtube.com/moreloko, you can watch any games that I've completed while streaming on Twitch. I complete quite a few of them. I think we're coming up on like 100 games in total at this point. There's also a bunch of StarCraft 2 custom campaigns over there if you're interested, so make sure to go check it out. A link is down below in the description of this video. That's youtube.com/moreloko. It's a lot of content over there though. We're uploading currently 3 episodes a day over there, which is quite a bit. Anyways, Roaches here pushing back those Archons. Couple of creep tumors ended up going down. Nothing all too crazy. That being said, at this point, Blink I think is done, yeah. Thought for a second he cancelled it, but no. Blink at this point is done. And he's gonna go for the +1 ground weapons too. That one is a little bit late. So I don't think it's gonna line up with much of anything here, at least for the time being. Yeah, okay. I was gonna say, if you have Stalkers available, it's not a terrible idea. A couple of Zerglings here running on over in that direction. A couple of Banelings also coming up. Okay, so we have Roaches and Banelings. Not something we usually see already at this point in the game. So maybe this is something that can catch MaxPax off guard as he's busy microing over here at the front. A couple of Banelings are waddling on over towards the 3rd base. Without Bane speed, they can still get in there. Okay, no, he does snipe it. And a couple of Stalkers at the very least got cancelled there from warping in. But 2 probes only is not really that much. Honestly, a really good game here so far for MaxPax, but he needs to be careful. Despite the fact, that he's done a lot of early game harassment damage, Lambo has not been sitting still either. 4th hatchery lives. Quite a few Protoss units have now gone down. 1 Prism even ended up getting sniped as well. That's not really what you want to see. While the follow-up Prism apparently is going to snipe an Overlord, or, well, the Archon, together with the Prism. I think this is actually putting Lambo in a pretty comfortable position once again. I like the early game harassment, but the problem is, right, so the amount of workers killed was really nice, and pretty much best case scenario right here for MaxPax, but the nice advantage of going for that quick Stargate opener is that you can take a 3rd base nice and early, so your own economy is quite a bit more reasonable. When you're going for anything that's not a Stargate start, your own eco takes a hit as well, so you almost like need to deal damage in order to justify. And now suddenly, though, we have units all over the map. A little bit of harassment on the left side as well, trying to go after this newly acquired hatchery right here for Lambo. I think the Roaches, though, are going to be enough, although 1 Archon here, quite annoying as well. At the same time, there is a fight over here. A couple of Roaches trying to set up the smallest little sandwich ever. Thinking that MaxPax, though, is more than enough to get rid of all the army over here. Okay, a couple of probes actually apparently ended up going down here as well. There's still no bailing speed, but Lambo doesn't need it as he's just going straight through the front door, blowing up probes wherever he can. Okay. Some of the army made it back home. Another Overlord in a little bit of trouble, but not enough reach right there on that 1 Archon. I've got a feeling that these disruptors are going to be very important. The fact that he just ended up losing a good amount of probes. That's the thing about Banelings, right? Like, maybe you can deal a lot of damage with your small, subtle moves here as Protoss, but then, yeah, all of your elegance and all of your beautiful micro in the early game is nullified as soon as Zerg rolls in with a couple of Banes. Or in this case, just walks in. Didn't even need to be rolling here. it's very easy to accidentally fall behind when you're not super careful with your building positioning and when you're not super careful with your... Ooh, one disruptor, for example, here goes down as well. I mean, you're not super careful with exactly where you're positioning your units. With Zerg, you have a lot more speed, a lot of momentum. You can move around the map a lot easier. But Lambo looking strong right here in game number 1. Maybe caught off guard a little bit by that harassment with the Adepts and then also, obviously, those Dark Templar. But other than that, he's been playing a stellar game. Prism over here. Also gets sniped. That is painful. Good positioning once again by Lambo. Actually, listening to myself commentate this game, I got one of the biggest compliments on one of my YouTube videos a couple days ago. I tried to read as many comments as I can. But after years of being accused of being Zerg biased, someone in the comment section said, Loco, you're always cheering for the Protoss player. It's disgusting. You should stop. All right. At the very least, you know, something along those lines. Pretty great. Pretty great. Yeah, after being called Zerg biased for many, many years. Someone called me Protoss biased instead. I was like, ooh, Loco. This probably means you've been, you know, doing a decent job. I mean, to be fair, I haven't been playing a whole lot of StarCraft 2 ladder over the last, I want to say half year or so. And I do actually believe, in a weird way, that makes me less biased. Because when you play a lot of Zerg, which is what I played myself, right? Or I play myself. Yeah, when you play a lot, it's very easy to just look at problems only from your perspective. Right? It's very easy to imagine that the grass is always greener on the other side when you're, yeah, looking at a matchup primarily from the Zerg's point of view, for example. But, yeah, in a way, maybe not playing as much can make you a better commentator. It's a weird theory of mine, but I wouldn't be surprised if it's true. I mean, I've played a lot of StarCraft over the years, obviously, but I've been trying to see things a little bit more from different sides as well. And after playing quite a bit of Protoss, I can guarantee you it's definitely not the F2A move race that people tell you to believe. Anyhow, this game, not decided yet. 12 minutes into the match. Both players still have a good enough economy to continuously make units. I'm starting to like this unit composition from MaxPax more and more, but he's kind of lacking splash damage. Okay, there's the splash damage coming in from the left. Careful though, you really don't want to lose those units. Now a bunch of Archons here are... Okay, trying to take care of those Banelings. They're connecting with whatever they can. Lambo just rolling through right now with the Banelings, but that's a massive warp in. Battery overcharge, obviously, incredibly helpful as well. There's the shield battery here on the right side of the map, getting targeted down with a couple of biles. Looks like one of the disruptors does go down as well. Lambo with a dominating supply lead right now, but this fight is definitely not a super easy one for him. He's gonna have to have his reinforcements available, and they are coming across the map right now. Okay, yeah, 25 probes have gone down here in total, and I think that is enough to justify this attack, especially if you can also get this Nexus. Because now suddenly, Protoss is just sitting at 3 base economy with 2 of those expansions, or 2 of those bases running very, very low. I think that MaxPax's best bet at this point is to put all of his eggs in one basket. He's got +3 finishing up here in about a minute. I wouldn't mind seeing him just make a ton of units and then going across the map. He's bleeding out too many units. We've seen a bunch of those prisms going down for free. We've seen a couple disruptors misrallied. It's nice to harass your opponent's mineral lines, but you really cannot afford to just lose a couple of those units for quote-unquote free. We've also never had a lot of Immortals in this game, have we? No. 0 Immortals in a game against a lot of Roaches. Yeah. Don't think it's a bad call. He decided to go straight for the disruptor style, which is nice, but if your opponent is capable of microing like Lambo is, those units are not as useful. A disruptor to try and deny a Baneling roll-by is one way of doing it, I suppose. Yeah, disruptor's still helpful though, here in this defensive position. Okay, he's trying his very best, but every time he gets close, Lambo just barely moves those units away. Okay. This is Lambo going in for the killer move right now. He's got a good amount of economy. He could just sit back and make a macro game happen. But he can also just try and aim for the victory right here, right now. Disruptors are starting to connect, which is why I wouldn't mind seeing him sitting back. Trying to take up a more defensive posture here. At this point, the economy of MaxPax is just completely in shatters. And it's Lambo who wins game number 1. Next up, we find ourselves on Inside and Out. This particular series, by the way, was recommended by quite a few of you. So, I'm assuming, right? I don't know, but I'm assuming that we're not gonna see a bunch of macro games in a row. Maybe I'm wrong, but I wouldn't be surprised if there's gonna be a little bit of spice in this series as well. Usually, at the very least, whenever people recommend a best-of-5 to me, either it's like epic long macro games, or it's gonna be something a little bit cheesy. Sometimes we do have those epic long macro games in these tournaments as well, but they seem to come out more so with like the bigger offline tournaments when players just absolutely refuse to leave because there's too much money on the line. When it comes to the weekly cups, so I think first place for this one, I think it's $200. I want to say $200. They've shifted around the prize pool a bunch over the years. Anyways, it's something along those lines anyways, and you know, it's a good chunk of money, but players tend to be a little bit more aggressive whenever the prize pools are a little bit smaller. At the very least, once again, a working theory of mine. So far, though, everything's everything's a normie right here on Inside and Out. Gateway on the low ground, 20 supply Cybercore and Nexus, nothing out of the ordinary. I'm expecting Lambo to try and connect the bases with another hatchery here in a moment. It's annoying, of course, because without creep spread, it can be difficult to actually maneuver your army around, but so far, nothing too crazy here for the Zerg. Queen starts up. He'll probably go for another queen here as well. There we go. And then a couple of Zerglings. Okay. So MaxPax, what kind of tech are we going for? Because you've got the Cybercore done. He actually is very late on that second gas geyser. I'm not sure exactly why we're delaying the second assimilator here, because he doesn't have any gas for anything. Interesting. Okay, so this is, again, MaxPax mixing it up. I thought his early game was excellent, by the way, in the previous match. His mid and late game, we never really got to a late game, I guess, but his mid-game follow-up wasn't nearly as competent as his early game, but I wouldn't be surprised if he goes for something similar like that again, maybe one of the later games of this series, but these are just a bunch of gateways. So he's going for warp gates and then 3 gateways in total while mining 2 probes in each assimilator only. That is a very small amount of gas income. So I guess we're gonna have a gateway-based push? Is that what we're doing? How many gateways are we gonna make, though? Okay, so it's just 3 gateways here in total. Now we're gonna go Twilight? Really? So he's prioritizing these early game units that are actually getting some work done at this point. Not bad at all. But he's prioritizing those units over any sort of tech. So normally what you do is you go for your tech structure, so your Twilight Council, your Robo Facility, or your Stargate, as soon as the Cybercore is done. Now this Cybercore was finished for like 2 minutes before, okay, maybe not 2 minutes, because the clock is only at 2:40, but it felt like 2 minutes. He definitely waited a long while until he actually finished up that Twilight. Lambo is gonna get in there with a scout, and you'll see that the Twilight Council just finishes, assuming his camera was actually over here. And it's gonna be that delayed glaive. This is something that I've been really interested in, okay? So historically speaking, we've only really seen glaive adept openers, and by the way, in case you're unfamiliar, the glaives right here, the research is gonna benefit the adepts. They get about 45% additional attack speed. So historically speaking, we've seen that like upgrade lined up with a very large group of units, and obviously the earlier you show up on the other side of the map, the bigger the chances are that your opponent isn't gonna have the stuff that they need to actually defend against that. So right now, Lambo is making army already in preparation for a conventional adept timing, because the upgrade could have been finished at this point. There's no way he's gonna commit. No way. Yes? Really? I mean, it's only a small group of links right now, but before Glaives is done, I almost feel that it is a misplay. I mean, he's killing army units. That's nice and all, but... Okay, well, I feel like he should have canceled that one. It just doesn't make a lot of sense to me to go for an attack right now without glaives when you've already lost 5 adepts. I've seen MaxPax do this a couple times before where he goes for something similar like this. So I don't think it's actually a misplay. I think he's, doing this on purpose, but I've got a feeling that theoretically this really should not work. Okay. There's a couple of, what are they called? The Ravagers over there. The raining corrosive biles along that crevice is really sweet. They're now coming in from the high ground as well. This is not it. Yeah, no, this ain't it, MaxPax. I mean, he's ahead right now economically, I guess, with the amount of workers available. So now we have the Robo Bay coming up. Okay. So it's, yeah, it's Glaive Adepts, so the late Glaive Adepts into Disruptors, which is pretty great against that lair-based style, I guess, right? Or that well, lair-lust-based style where Lambo isn't gonna have roach speed done. But this is already incredibly Zergling heavy, so I wonder if Lambo is just sniffing this out. That being said, I brought up the work accounts earlier. This is awkward, because even though he's only killed a handful of drones at this point in the game, Lambo has been sold a story here of an adept opener, and he's been second-guessing himself quite a bit as far as his drone timings go. Now, once again, units do get into the mineral line. This may actually be working out. It feels so wrong, but I think it actually may be right. There's a big adept warp in the main base, too. This is before any disruptors have even started up. Okay. So, it's just 2 base adepts. Right? Like, Zerg players have learned how to counter this build in, like, 2015. Or when did the Adept get introduced? It's been a long time, is my point. Theoretically speaking, you would imagine that a delayed timing, like a suboptimal timing of a build like this, isn't as great, but MaxPax is showing us that with some clever mind games and some good tricks, you can actually catch your opponent off guard. And obviously, against the most optimized version of this build, Zerg players will know exactly what to do, but when you're encountering something like this that is just a little bit uncommon, he even kills the freaking hatchery with Adept right now. When you encounter something that is out of the ordinary, apparently you can still make it work. That's hilarious to me. Okay, so there's the Warp Prism speed upgrade, and now the Disruptors are coming up. This is the StarCraft 2 edition of a Reaver drop. Yeah, Lambo doesn't... Yeah, he doesn't get that kill, so GG is cold. And it turns out MaxPax doesn't even need his Disruptors. And that brings us to Tropical Sacrifice. MaxPax, over the last couple of years, he's been learning the rules of StarCraft 2. And now that he knows them, he apparently decides to throw them out of the window and only use the ones that he actually needs. Very interesting strategies, for sure. But I gotta say, I love it. I've got a feeling that MaxPax is actually one of the very best Protoss players on the planet. Like, according to Aligolek, he is literally, like, either the best or, like, the second best Protoss. The thing is, you gotta take those stats with a grain of salt, because MaxPax does not play offline tournaments. So he only plays online. He's never been to an offline event before, which, yeah, really is a shame, because, okay, so he's a top 10 player according to a statistics website. However, if you look at his earnings compared to the other guys, it's not even close. So MaxPax is sitting at about $54,000 in tournament earnings, which is not bad. But if you compare it to other guys in the top 10, like Maru, who's sitting at over $1 million. Sero at nearly 1.2 million. Bjorn at about $500,000. Hero at 400,000. Raynor at 525,000. Clem at 225. Dark at 906. Solar, 464. Bunny, 150. Those are the other players in the current top 10. And MaxPax, while theoretically ranks amongst them, right? He's just... I mean, in his defense, he's only 18 years old. So, you know, those other guys have been playing this game at a high level for much longer. With the exception of, well, a couple of them in that list, I suppose. But it would be so cool to see MaxPax going to some offline tournaments. He's never given a reason as to why he doesn't go to them. So, you know, it's obviously a personal preference, right? If he doesn't want to, that's fair game. I would just, as a fan of StarCraft, right? He's probably got a good reason. But as a fan of StarCraft 2, I would love to see it. I would love to see him succeed in tournaments. Ooh, okay. One of the Adepts does go down over here. Already, though, one drone ended up going down too, but the metabolic boost finishes up, and that one Adept in the natural in a little bit of trouble. Okay. Lambo right now reading his opponent's early game a little bit better. This time around, by the way, it is a Stargate. But MaxPax bringing out a different build for all 3 games of this series so far. Let me actually update the scoreboard real quick. I hadn't said that one yet. Nobody noticed. Nobody noticed. Don't you dare comment something like, Lowko, I'm so confused. What's the score? I don't understand what's happening. Okay, don't give me a timestamp. Roach Warren coming up right here for Lambo. 4 minutes into the game. I feel like a lot of the builds, though, that MaxPax has been going for so far, and now suddenly, just a good old Oracle opener deals way more damage than it should. This first Oracle should really not get this damage done. Immediate cancel as well on the Roach Warren. Okay. Yeah, MaxPax is selling stories here. And Lambo is gobbling them up. This is the most standard opener we've seen for, well, a long time now. Maybe he made a small deviation that I wasn't paying exact attention to here, but clearly Lambo did not expect it. And he ends up losing a couple more workers than he needs to. Then again, not the end of the world. Definitely something he can recover from, but it's nice to see that, yeah, that very first Oracle actually got some damage in. Curious actually to look at Lambo's overall tournament earnings. Lambo's always been very good, but not quite at like the level of, for example, a Cero or a Raynor. He is apparently sitting at $132,000 in tournament earnings. So obviously, all of those numbers I just mentioned, they do not include team salaries and all the rest of it. Although, you know, that will mostly cover things like travel. And obviously there's some salary and whatnot involved too for the best players in the world. But anyways, we've got ourselves a lair coming up right now for Lambo. While going +1 melee. I was gonna say, I feel like the builds that MaxPax has been going for so far, they could have been countered by going for a lair a little bit quicker. Having that mobile detection against the Dark Templar would have been great. Having that roach speed done at an appropriate time would have been great as well. There's a couple of things you can certainly do to make the defense a little easier. The problem is, against the most optimized versions of those builds... Oh, okay, cancel. Against the most optimized versions of those, for example, adept openers, right? You don't actually want to have a lair done. You want to instead spend those resources on additional economy and additional units. Technology is not necessary against a standard glaives opener, but I think that's one of the things that MaxPax is kind of abusing so far here. He knows that his opponent is going to respond with X, so rather than going for Y, he decides to go for Z. And now he's going for a really quick 4th Nexus. Is that what we're doing? Just off of 4 gas geysers? Again, cheeky little play right here from our Protoss. Is that the plan? He's got the resources for it. I think this probe is not supposed to go back home. Pretty sure that probe was supposed to go over there. Somehow there's a stalker in that area. I think he probably shift-queued the wrong unit somehow. Anyhow, since we saw the cancel from Lambo on the Roach Warren, he now decides to go for both a Hydralisk Den as well as a Baneling Nest. So a little bit different here. This is going to be Hydraling Bane, which is excellent against the gateway-based army. But it's not quite out on the map yet. So matter of fact, Hydras, they're not that great until you get both of those upgrades done. And even then, they're shaky. Okay, Zerg's going around the back here, at least thinking about it. There was already a stasis ward set up over there. But Lambo thinking ahead, realizing what's going on. Sentry over there taking a lot of damage. Yeah, this is not really a push that achieves too much, though. But maybe the queens are going to go down? Is that the plan? He's forcing out a lot of army. Lambo is already, though, sitting at 81 drones. And even though he wants to add on a couple more, he'll really not be too hurt at this point to be forced to make a bunch of army. As a matter of fact, he's got that 6th hatchery. No, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. He's got the 5th hatchery right now, finishing at the 6 o'clock position. Could have used that as a save, the 6 o'clock position. Ah, dang it, Lowko. Anyways. MaxPax roaming the edge of the creep, like his stalkers are Hellions. A little bit funny. We have Ravens and Hellions over here, I guess, ready to snipe as many tumors as possible. Creep clearing is nice, but I'm not sure that that is really what he needs here. Lambo is going to outgrow MaxPax here over the next couple of minutes if the game goes the way that I think it's been going. Lambo actually even ready for a roll by right here at the 12 o'clock position, but he didn't even have any workers to kill, because that's how low the probe economy right now for MaxPax really is, right? Maybe MaxPax was expected to already be at like 90 probes here, but not quite the case. In the meantime, there's also an Overlord right now dropping into a Dropalord, or morphing rather into a Dropalord. A couple of drones have gone down. I'm a little bit concerned though for when all of these upgrades finish up. So Baneling Speed is going to make the Zerg army way stronger. The ranged upgrade for the Hydras is going to make them way stronger as well. Apparently, though, MaxPax's a big fan of this position here. Once again, Zergling reading the area correctly as it runs into the stasis ward. Oracle's getting a ton of damage in, though. Yeah. MaxPax has once again turned into a bit of a trickster, but a macro trickster instead. Very clever positioning and really clever use of the map. What Lambo should have done is knock down those rocks. This position would have never been possible in the first place. I would love to see him go and do that right now, but MaxPax very slippery so far for sure. Trying his best to constantly come up with tricky ways of winning the game and catching his opponent off guard. May actually just be working out as well. There goes the Prism. Prism ready to go into the main base. Only a couple of Stalkers here targeting that hatchery, and I think there is going to be enough to kill it. Yep. It's going to be the end of that one. I mean, no. Really? Ha! Okay, well, I think he's going to get it here eventually. Okay, there's no way that that hatchery is long for this world, although... yeah, it's still up and running right now, as long as it's generating larvae. Not the end of the world. MaxPax now, though, at 80 probes versus 64 drones. Apparently, well, 63 right now, since one more ended up going down. Prism manages to get away. Queen's actually transfusing the Nexus, or, well, the Zerg Nexus here back up to full. Can't believe he didn't snipe that one. But he probably wasn't paying attention to it anymore. He probably thought he was going to die anyways. Zealot run by over here. Nah, there's no way. That hatchery is still gonna die. Right? Stop doing it to me, man! MaxPax, stop! Give me the satisfaction of the hatchery snipe, bro. He's not gonna get it, is he? Baneling's over here. Not getting a whole lot done either. Zealots in the meantime on the left side of the map. Okay, shift Q towards that spine crawler. They get a great wraparound, and this is actually a pretty excellent position. Still a fight happening here on the right side of the map as well, as MaxPax is looking to swarm the Zerg player. Trying to come in from every angle. There's another disruptor. Oh, aggressive blink forward as he gets the Hydralisks. Hydras are pretty expensive units, actually. What are we watching? Like, it really feels like MaxPax should have been a Zerg, right? Like, the way he's playing, he's trying to swarm over the Swarm player, which is really cool to see, but it feels so uncomfortable to see MaxPax, yeah, making his decisions. There it is. Lambo looks at his economy and he realizes, you know what, there's no way. GG. Now, I know I'm at the risk of being called a Protoss fanboy once again, and I'm completely accepting that fate. But honestly, I'm very impressed with the way that MaxPax is playing this. So initially, it was a bit of a cheeser. Then he turned into your quintessential macro Protoss. And now he's trying to combine the two with a really clever and smart way of playing the game. I honestly do think that's a sign of greatness in StarCraft 2. When you know exactly what you need to do, but because you understand the matchup so well, you also know what your opponent is thinking, and therefore you can try and stay one step ahead of them. Curious to see what MaxPax does over here. It's once again going to be a Stargate opener, but I wonder if he's going to be roaming the map awkwardly again, reinforcing units from his own third base while dropping in the main base and not using the Prism in what is the established method. This is match point right here for MaxPax. Lambo clearly not as comfortable against the army movement right from MaxPax in the previous game. It's probably something, though, that he's not too happy about himself, because I do know that Lambo can get pretty upset at his own performance. Wouldn't be surprised if he knows exactly what it is that he needs to do, but that he just simply, you know, didn't do it in the previous game. That's the story of basically every StarCraft pro out there. Or every StarCraft player, period. When you know what to do, but for some reason your hands just don't want to communicate as well with your brain, and for some reason you're not executing. Anyways, the two small mineral fields here are gonna be mined out. MaxPax is gonna be taking the safest possible third base. We had that Void Ray opener. Again, different start here from MaxPax. Lambo has been doing essentially the same early game every single match so far. Then again, he's a Zerg player, of course, so maybe that's not all too surprising. But MaxPax is mixing it up. Going for the Void Ray. Once more, an inefficient start. I don't think it's particularly great. But it's certainly making Lambo second guess himself. Lambo should know exactly what to do against this opener. And I'm fairly sure that he does. It's just one of those things where you're like, okay, MaxPax, what do you have in store for me this time around? Apparently, it's a second Stargate. So it's Void Ray into Oracle into second Stargate. I'm assuming it's for Mass Phoenix. Could even be Mass Oracle. Could even be Mass Void Ray. But Phoenixes are the more standard way of going about this. Once again, those pesky early game Adepts. These two Adepts, actually, they've gotten way too much damage done. In the previous game, they finally got the Knight pretty hard. But MaxPax overall in this series getting way too much value out of this. The Adepts right now even, yeah, forcing the Queens to go towards the low ground. And that opens the front door for the Oracle in the main base. 9 drones! 9 drones, just like that, at the cost of 2 Adepts. They even killed 7 Zerglings as well. That's way too much. Okay, it is indeed going to be Phoenix play. Lambo going for... yeah, the good old Rogeling army once again, but... not too inspired by the way that Lambo is playing this series here so far. One of the creep tumors ends up going down. He's going to be able to relay those pretty easily. A couple of overlords moving forward as well. I don't think that's the direction you want to go. These Phoenixes are going to show up all of a sudden, right? So I think you probably want to save upwards of 6 to 8 of them before you really show your opponent. Maybe 5. Maybe wait until you have 5 of them. He's maneuvering around over here. I'm not exactly sure why. I think that's the task of that Void Raid, to be honest, to scout any overlords. Okay, well, Lambo. Ooh, I thought he saw it, but I don't think he actually knows. Okay, so it's 5 Phoenixes that apparently we're waiting for until he goes for a move out. They're gonna go into the main base. Spore Crawler is nice, but guess what? Phoenixes have quite a bit of HP. They look like paper planes, but they can just, yeah, they can stand in that mineral line or hover, I guess, in that mineral line for quite a while. In the meantime, though, Lambo. Okay, you know what? I wasn't paying attention really much to, or very much here to what Lambo was doing. Lambo going for a cheeky little move here as well. He's brought Queens as well as Overlords to the front, and the Queens are going to start laying down creep tumors. All of a sudden, Lambo, okay, I was not paying attention to this at all. Lambo shows up with what is essentially a 2-base Zerg all-in. That is what we want to see here. I think that is an excellent choice against this Phoenix opener. That is a little bit unlucky here for MaxPax, who did so much damage that he decided to go for an all-in right now. He's forced out an all-in apparently here from Lambo, and I don't think Phoenixes are going to be particularly great against that. Either way, though, Lambo is showing up right now. There is an Immortal coming out. That Immortal is nice. Battery overcharge in the back, getting a lot of value in too. MaxPax setting up a beautiful area here. A lot of choke points for his Protoss ground units to back up into. Phoenixes have to be careful with their liftoffs. They obviously don't have infinite energy. Queen's trying to transfuse whatever they can, but slowly the Ravagers are falling. 10 probes, though, have already gone down. One of the Immortals here trying to get to the back of that base once again, and it gets into a choke point where the surface area is minimized. Ravager, though, there with that Corrosive Valve, finishing it all off eventually. And the problem is now the Phoenixes are without energy. You can lift all you want, but what are you actually using to kill those Zerg units? More and more reinforcements are heading across the map. And despite the fact that I missed his lead up here from Lambo entirely, I think he's done it. Yeah, I'm pretty sure he's done it. GG. Okay, so real quick. This is when those Adepts went into the mineral line, and the Oracle killed a whole lot of drones in the main base. I am pretty sure that this is the point where Lambo stopped droning. Yep. Remember those Overlords that were moving forward? I thought it was a misplay. It was not a misplay. Even though the revelation was on those Overlords, he decided to make that move regardless. So just non-stop army production here for a little while. It is, of course, a bit dangerous, because there could be a Disruptor follow-up, right? Like, MaxPax has already shown that he's fond of that, but... anyways, he ends up having enough stuff here. He's playing against the correct build order, and it ends up working out. Maybe not the most comfortable win right here for Lambo, but hey, a win is a win. All right. So, that brings us to the map Waterfall. The final map in this best-of-5 series, and the winner of this map will be the winner of the ESL Open Cup 151 for the European region. Waterfall is a map with a quick rush distance, not that many bases to take. So Lambo immediately moving the drone on over towards the third base. Despite the fact that that probe built a pylon on the low ground, MaxPax still just send it across, and he's still going to be able to arrive on time to block that hatchery from coming up at the Zerg's preferred timing. That just shows you how quick the rush distance on this map really is. Gateway on the low ground here for MaxPax. Already setting up a rally point, so he's certainly looking to get aggressive once more. I think that those early game Adepts have been getting way too much value. That's really a theme we've seen in these games. They've just gotten too much value. Just a handful more Zerglings, maybe a little bit faster on the Zergling speed. Something along those lines will make that defense quite a bit easier. Anyhow, 20 supply Nexus, followed up with a 20 supply Cybercore. Now we're gonna continue with our Pro production once again. Lambo, though, suddenly showing up with a much more aggressive build. Even though he was forced into it in that previous game, it is clear that MaxPax does have some weaknesses in his early game. Especially when he's playing that Phoenix start, right? When you're playing mass Phoenixes, and you're going up against the Zergling-based all-in, it just really doesn't work out. That's that gateway rally point, by the way, that he just set. So that gateway is ready to go across the map as soon as the Cybercore finishes up. He'll probably start chrono boosting out 2 of those adepts once again. Okay. What kind of tech are we going for? Twilight Council? Yep, Twilight Council. Going for a Robo first doesn't make a lot of sense, since he had 150 minerals, 100 gas. I don't think he was going to wait until 150 gas when you want to go for a Stargate. I mean, it doesn't make a lot of sense, but MaxPax has already been showing us that some of his strategies seemingly don't. But going for a super delayed Stargate would be a little bit funky. We actually already have a good group of Zerglings out, actually. Oh my god! Hold up right now, we just pulled the drones. Okay, so one thing you can do with drones is mineral walk. You can mineral walk through units, although at this point, MaxPax hasn't even finished up the wall just yet. He does not have a third structure here at the front. Completely caught off guard against this aggression. He's now going to use the drones here to keep that Stalker occupied while having the Zerglings working on the pylon. And without any of the production over here, this becomes a disaster very quickly. A lot more Zerglings are coming up. Link speed is going to finish up momentarily as well. Lambo pulling out another cheese, 2 in a row. And I honestly don't mind it whatsoever. After killing that pylon, I've got a feeling that MaxPax is in a world of trouble. He does bring that adept back home after killing a bunch of drones. That's nice and all, but Hez and Protoss already lost a little bit too much. 25 probes in total. GG is cold. Okay, and just like that, it is Lambo who obtains the victory in this Best-of-5 series. I didn't have as much time to fanboy over Lambo, but I actually really like what he did in these last 2 games. Reading his opponent really well in the first couple games of this series, noticing a weakness in his armor, and immediately abusing it in the next couple games. Excellent series of Zerg versus Protoss. If you enjoyed watching this, please take the 1 second that it takes to hit the like button down below. And if you really enjoyed it, make sure you hit the subscribe button as well as the little bell icon so you get notified as soon as future videos go live. For now though, thanks for watching. Have a great rest of your day. Don't forget to smile, and I'll see you once again in the next one.